Hello, you're welcome back. All right, so we're going to be looking at sound in this video. All right, now of course, sound is actually a type of wave, right? In fact, sound is an example of a class of wave known as mechanical wave, a wave that requires material medium for the propagation. Now, what is sound and what does it do? Okay, sound is a wave, okay, a wave that actually stimulates the stimulates the sensation or the sense of God. So sound wave, what it does is that it actually is similar the sense of organ of hearing. Now basically a wave sound wave is mostly produced by a vibrating object. Okay, of course when you hit on an object, right, when you hit on an object you will cause the particles of that object to vibrate, and by so doing they actually produce sound as an energy, okay, which can be detected by the ears, right? So wave actually is a wave mostly produced by vibratory object that stimulates the sensation, okay, of hearing. Now we're going to be looking at we'll talk about the propagation of sound. Now, of course, all type of wave are energy. I already told you that, okay? So you can call sound a wave or an energy, all right? All type of wave are energy, because a wave is defined as a disturbance that transfer energy from one part of a medium to another. So please take note of that. All right. So now, of course, a sound wave, okay, is said to be mechanical. Why? Because it doesn't just pass through a vacuum. It requires material medium, and of course, the medium of propagation of sound includes solid, right, liquid, and of course, the last but not the least, sound passes through air, which of course is a gas. Now, the speed of sound is actually fastest. Okay, sound is actually fastest in solid. Okay, with a velocity of nearly 5,000. Okay, approximately velocity of approximately 5,000 meter per second. So sound will travel fastest when it is actually passing through a solid, followed by liquid. Okay, the velocity of sound in liquid is approximately 5,000 meter per 1,500 meter per second, right? Then sound is actually slowest in air with a velocity of 340 meter per second. All right, so basically, we'll discuss more about the speed of sound in air and, okay, the factors that affect the speed of sound in air. I will talk about other mediums, but here I'm only interested in air factors affecting, okay, speed of sound in air. Okay, so now these are there are many factors that affect speed of sound in air, but I'm just gonna talk about just two of them. One of them I'm gonna talk about is the temperature, right? Temperature of air. Temperature of air. All right. Now, how sound, okay, actually affect how temperature actually affects the velocity of sound is what I'm going to generate by this relationship. Now the velocity of sound in air, okay, is directly proportional to the square root of the absolute temperature. The capital letter T is the absolute temperature. What does this simply mean? That as the temperature of our air actually increases, the velocity of sound in air actually also increase. All right. Now we can actually use this proportionality to create a relationship or a formula. And you know very well that if I should replace this proportionality with an equal to, I have to introduce a constant. So now, with what I have here now, okay, V is equal to K square root of T. So K is the constant of proportionality. So in that case, now the constant of proportionality, okay, is given as V all over the square root of T. So I mean the velocity of sound in air divided by the square root of its absolute temperature is always constant. So with this now, I can actually, anytime I can create a relationship, okay, between velocity and temperature anytime there's a change. So anytime there's a change, this ratio V all over square root of T will change proportionally. So let's say there's a change between the initial V1 all over the square root of T2. All right. It will also change proportionally to the final, which of, please pardon me, V1 all over the square root of T1, okay? Initial velocity divided by the square root of initial temperature. Anytime there's a change, they will also change proportionally in that ratio. Final velocity then divided by the final temperature. Okay, for example, let's say you have a velocity of sound in air set to be moving at 300 meters per second. Okay, and that actually happens at a time where the temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. Now remember, the T here is absolute temperature, and if the temperature is given in degrees Celsius, you have to convert it to absolute temperature. Remember, absolute temperature is a temperature in Kelvin, so I have to convert it by adding 273 to it. So of course, if I add 273 to this, I should have 293. Okay. So now the question is find the velocity of the sound, the final velocity of the sound when the temperature now, let's say, just changes by simply from 20 to 27. Of course, I still need to convert it to Kelvin. So this time around, I'm having 300 Kelvin. So if you are being given such a question, this is just a parameter of the question. We will use this formula, right? Okay, so putting that in that formula, let me start from here. V1 of course is 300 divided by the square root of T1, which of course is the square root of 293. Alright, equal to V2, that's what I'm looking for, V2, the final velocity, then divided by T2, the square root of T2, right? And of course that will be the square root of 300. So of course if I cross multiply it, then if I now make V2 the subject, I'm gonna have V2 cross multiplying, of course, will give me 300 multiplied by the square root of 300, then divided by the square root of 293. Okay, so I hope that's well understood. So this can be evaluated. So this actually shows, you just use your calculator and do this, get the answer. It's easy. So this shows that as the temperature of sound increases, the velocity of that sound also increases in air. So please take note of that as we now look at the second factor that affect the velocity of sound in air, and that is wind. Now, how does wind actually do that? How does wind affect the velocity of sound? Now, look at how that actually happens. Anytime wind okay, and of course sound move in opposite direction, the wind will force the sound to actually move upward. Now, there's one thing you will notice, okay? Wind forcing the sound to move upward, okay? It's actually moving it from the layer of hot. Remember, this the okay, closer to the earth is a hot temperature. Then up, higher up, okay, the temperature becomes cooler. And having known that temperature actually increases velocity, so by the time wind actually force this sound to go up, okay, the temperature now at sound now is now the sound wave is now at a higher altitude with a cooler temperature, then the velocity will reduce. Why? Because the velocity of sound is proportional to temperature. Okay, so invariably wind causes the sound to move upward if they are moving in the opposite direction. Please take note. So if what we see here is wind and sound moving in opposite direction, if wind and sound are moving in opposite direction, then the wind will force the sound to go up, then reducing the velocity, and at the same time also reducing the intensity. Okay, so when the sound goes up, the intensity of that sound actually reduces. So invariably now, velocity reduces, number one. Then at the same time, intensity of the sound. Of course, intensity also affects the audibility of that sound. So, and of course, you must have actually experienced such effect before. Let's say you are in an area where you are hearing some people, okay, talking from an addressing system or loudspeaker, or music is being played somewhere, okay, in a loudspeaker. I noticed that at some point in time you hear that such music very audibly, okay, very loud, but at some interval of time the sound actually reduces, as if someone turned down the volume of that of the amp or whatsoever is producing the sound. Okay, no, it's not someone turning down the volume of that of the source of the sound. It's the direction of the wind and the sound. Okay, so because at the time where the sound and the wind are opposite in moving in opposite direction, then the sound will be pushed upward and the intensity will reduce. So invariably now, let's look at a situation where this same wind, okay, wind also get to move in the same direction with the sound. Then you know what happened at this point. Sound will be forced to, okay, will be forced to come downward if they are moving in the same direction, and that will of course increase velocity and also increase intensity. So I hope that is well understood. Okay, so that is wind, sound, and of course wind go in the same direction. All right, so let's now proceed. We're going to talk about a very important phenomenon, okay? In fact, the basic concept is sound, and one of them is going to be a phenomenon known as echo, the echo of sound. Echo of sound is simply the reflection of sound. Reflection of sound. But the effect of the reflection of the sound is that that sound that is produced is being heard after some interval of time, okay? So the reflection of sound that causes it to be heard after some interval of time. You must have actually experienced that before. Someone said something, or you said something close to a hall, okay? A place that have a building with a hollow hall, then you now hear your sound after you must have said it after some interval of time. That is echo. How does it work? Let's say this is actually a source. Okay, so let's say this is source, the source of the sound. Okay, source of the sound produced, and here comes a wall, which of course is obstacle. Here comes a wall. So now this sound goes, as it reaches this wall, it it reflects. All right, it reflects. Now let's say the distance between the wall and the source of the sound is x. So invariably now this sound have to move to and fro. So it end up going to x, all right? X going and of course x coming, so that's going to be 2x. So that way I can actually get the velocity of the sound. If after measuring the time for me to hear that echo, because that echo is actually heard after the sound must have gone to and fro. So the velocity of sound, remember velocity is always giving us displacement all over time. So the displacement is 2 times the distance, okay? That's to and fro distance, 2 times x, then divided by the time. So this is the velocity of an echo, so please take note of that. Now, basically, this can be complete if we don't look at the basic application of an echo. All right. If you can look at the basic application of an echo. Now, echo is very important if you wish to determine, okay, determination of the depth of sea. Of course, any form of, you know, any form of analysis that involve you hearing the echo after you must have actually released a sound to a particular, object, such, okay, is a good application. So invariably now, if I want to determine the depth of the sea, how do I do that? By applying echo. Simple. I will not have to measure because of course depth of sea can be very long. So I may not have to use a depth rule to actually go down to the depth to measure it. It will be easy with echo. Let's say you have actually the sea. Okay, so with your both, okay, so with your boat you can simply release a sound. Okay, you can simply release a sound, a sound down to the depth, then wait for it to actually reflect and with your time. So of course if it reflects, you measure the time for each reflection and then you use the formula v is equal to 2x all over t. That way I can get the depth of the sea. Of course the depth of the sea is actually x. Okay, so of course to get the depth, the velocity of sand, of course the velocity of sand in liquid is constant, approximately 1500. So that is easy. Then you now multiply by the time for you the time it takes for you to hear the echo, then divide by 2. All right, so please take note of that. Let's say an echo is actually being heard approximately within interval of uh, well, let's say 1 minute 60 seconds, right? So that means this sea will have a depth of velocity of sound in liquid is 1500, then times 60, then divided by 2. Okay, so whatever you have here, that becomes the depth of the sea. Now apart from this, it can also be applied in medical diagnosis. Okay, medical. Okay, it is just easy for you for medical diagnosis where some ultrasound. Okay, look, that is that what of course the medical guy should know, because I know there's okay, ultrasound is not just ultrasound, possibly, yeah, it should be. Ultrasound is an sound with a very high frequency beyond the range of hearing. So invariably now, okay, in a medical system, it's easy for a sound to actually be released into the human body to a particular part of the organ, okay, to a particular organ. Then echo is actually the response. If in terms of echo will be heard, and when that response in terms of echo is being analyzed, okay, then the deformity in that organ can actually be detected. So it's as easy as that. And some other, of course, um, in oil too, okay, you can actually get to know the area where there's oil deposit by the help of echo. So please take note of all those applications. All right, so as we actually proceed, okay, so having no, not that all those are simple terms. Okay, I can still give you more. I can give you what is known as reverberation. Okay, so that it will not be sounding strange when you hear them. Reverberation is actually multiple echo that actually produce a long indistinct sound. Okay, is it multiple echoes? I hope this the spelling. Okay, in case my spelling is not right, you can correct that. All right, okay. So now that actually produces a very long indistinct sound. So reverberation basically can be a sound effect. Yes, it can. Most time, okay. In sound engineering, there are some effects that you need to, that is very important, especially when it comes to, let's say, movies or some other things you want to do. Okay, so some of these effects can also deal with repeated echo, being that okay, creating repeated echo that produces a very long indistinct sound that can create a particular effect, and that is reverberation. All right, so that's, let's just go straight to a very important part of this tutorial. Okay, so here we are going to be looking at the characteristics of sound. But before we actually talk about the characteristics of sound, let's actually differentiate between these two types of sound: music and noise. So how can we distinguish these two? All right, of course they are all sound. Music is a sound and noise is a sound. Now one thing about music is that, okay, it's a sound with regular, okay, the frequency of music is of a regular frequency, regular and of course coordinated frequency. Also, another thing about music is that it's pleasant to the ear. You hear it, okay, you don't feel uncomfortable, it's pleasant to the ear. But noise on the other hand is a sound with an irregular uncoordinated frequency, okay, irregular frequency. And of course, to make it worse, you discover that noise is always unpleasant to the hearer. So you can tell if what I'm actually producing from my sound, whether it's noise or music, okay? Okay, quite well. Now we believe that from a different perspective of music, some guys believe that rapping is a music, but we get to know that they are talking, right? What they are saying can actually be represented by a musical note, but they say it's music because it's coordinated and it's pleasant. So invariably, so for the fact that that sound cannot be represented by a musical note or tone, doesn't make it a music. So I might possibly be singing to you, okay? All right, okay, that is just by the way. Okay, so please just the difference between these two. But here we are going to look at the characteristics of sound. Okay, the characteristics of sound. Okay, so these are the characteristics I'm going to be listing out. Okay, every sound possesses a characteristic known as the pitch. The pitch. A sound possesses a characteristic known as quality. Quality. A sound possesses a characteristic known as loudness. Then a sound should possess a characteristic known as intensity. All right. So let's start with the very first. Pitch of a sound is a characteristic of sound that depend on the frequency of that sound. In fact, the higher the frequency, the higher the sound. So pitch is proportional to frequency. So if someone sings at a high pitch, that is actually high frequency, right? Okay, for people that do music or sings, they should know what pitch is, right? It's very common. Okay, very tiny, high frequency voice, right, or tone coming from any musical instrument or actually even voice, right? When you're playing your keyboard, you can actually play at a high pitch as you go octave. All right, that's just by the way. Okay, then the quality of sound. The quality of sound actually depends on what is known as overtone or harmonics. Okay, and what is it? What's this overtone? What's this harmonics? Okay, as a patent to quality. Now it is this quality, this overtone harmonics, okay, or generally the quality of sound that make you to distinguish sound coming from different instrumental sources, even though they are at the same frequency. I can be able to distinguish a sound from violin, and that's coming from a piano, okay, or even distinguish a song that is actually coming from a male voice and that of a female voice, even though they are singing the same frequency. So that is the quality of sound, and that quality of sound depends on overtone and harmonics. So I just want you to get to know their dependency. We'll talk more about overtones and harmonics, okay, subsequently in the tutorial. So we'll now look at loudness. Of course, the loudness of a sound, how loud a sound is dependent on the amplitude, okay. So that means the amplitude of the wave of that sound, which of course basically can increase that by increasing the volume of the sound. All right, that will increase the loudness. The intensity. The intensity of the sound is actually talking about the rate at which, okay, let me use I, the rate at which the energy of the sound flows, the rate at which the energy of the sound flows, all right, per unit area. So rate of flow, and of course we know the rate of flow of energy is energy all over time is power. So invariably the intensity of a sound is the power of that sound per unit area, okay, of the source or whatever is the area where it is actually being produced, okay. So please take note of all these characteristics of sound. Okay, so now we are going to be looking at, having known these basic characteristics of sound, we are going to be looking at music that is being generated when air is being set into vibration, and that is going to be the background for the construction of the instrument, the musical instrument we know as the wind instrument, for example, trumpet, okay, flute. People blow air into those instruments and they produce musical tone. So we are going to analyze that, all right, and that will be in the next video. Okay, see you in the next video. Thank you.